Today is, of course, International Women's Day, a day where the world comes together to celebrate annually on March the 8th. A focal point of bringing attention to issues such as gender equality in the workplace. Also an opportunity for those around the world to give their opinions on some of the issues that women face around the world, and more so than the UN Secretary General, António Guterres, yesterday making a statement saying that gender equality is still 300 years away. A chilling statement nonetheless, when you consider that half the human race may have to struggle for another 3 centuries for the full rights. It is something of a damning indictment yesterday from António Guterres. But what about here in the UAE? And what about when it comes to the number of women on boards? Because obviously it's something that a huge amount of activities and efforts have been put in place in recent years here in the UAE and the GCC as a whole. Diana Wilde is the co-founder of Aurora 50. She joins us now live in the studio. And first and foremost, happy International Women's Day. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Great to have
you for having me here.
Let's talk about those efforts, if we can, Diana, because we know that a number of companies, a number of organisations, government, public and private, have all come together to try and encourage the number of women on boards in recent years. Are those efforts bearing fruit at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So things have changed quite dramatically in the last couple of years. So when we first founded in 2020, the number of women on boards was about 3.5%. We brought some research out last year that saw that number rise to about 8.9% women on boards. We're still going through the AGMs currently, the annual general meetings, so we don't have quite those numbers yet for this year. Once that season's finished, we will, but we would expect it to be around 10 to 11%, something like that this year.
One of the initiatives has also been the Gender Balance Council put in place here as well. I mean, again, is this something that we look at and go, it has to be women on boards? Or are we talking more widely about women in leadership?
No, absolutely. We need to talk a lot more widely about it. So women on boards is sort of the starting place. If you have that diversity of thought within boardrooms, you have that discussion with the owners, the shareholders, you see that trickle down into the company. And then we start talking about getting women into leadership roles and into C-suite. And that's largely what the pledge is about for the Gender Balance Council. It's about getting those 30% leadership roles for women. And we're seeing a lot of commitment towards that. But there's also a lot of work that's happening behind the scenes as well. So companies that don't necessarily feel that they can achieve that within the time frame for the pledge are still putting in the effort to get it done. So you will see that there is more women taking those C-suite roles, not just, but comparatively to the rest of the business. It doesn't necessarily say that they can put that they can actually take the pledge at this point in time. And I think this is where, as a company, we need to take a step back and think about, well, okay, maybe today I can't pledge, but what am I doing to actually make sure that this is being addressed? Ultimately, companies that have that diversity of thought perform better. So we know we need to do it because ultimately there's going to be more profitability from this. But we know there are challenges and we know it's difficult, and every company has different challenges to address. So for some, it may be a case of looking at it and saying, okay, we don't have it. We have that equality at the graduate level, but we have issues within mid-management. For others, they may be saying, okay, well, we need to get that diversity into senior leadership roles, and we're looking at our own pipeline. How are we going to do this in the quickest way possible, whilst maintaining, obviously, the strategy for the business and getting the growth where we want?
How do we make sure as well, Diana, that we don't fall into the trap that I know some countries who were early to introduce targets for women on boards fall into, which is that you get the same women on a number of boards, on multiple boards, rather than multiple women on a few boards just because the pool is small?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I think everybody worries about. From the data that we've seen, we're not really seeing overboarding. And that's what that kind of refers to. Not with women anyway. We do sometimes see that on the other side. We have to be really mindful about overstretching people. It's a very, very big job being a board director. And there are rules in place as well to limit the number of seats that you can take, at least within those listed seats. But the reality is we want to be doing a really good job. So often, when women start being approached for this, they do also have to take a step back and think, this is going to be a long-term career for me. I'm going to build a portfolio. Therefore, I need to really think about, is it right for me to take this seat now? Or do I wait maybe for that international listed seat and do that later? Because right now I've already got 4 seats that I really want to make sure I'm really adding value in. It's really about pacing your career as well.
What about your reaction to the aforementioned comments from the UN Secretary General? 300 years away from gender equality.
Yeah, it's disappointing to say the least. I think there was something that he said that I thought was very interesting, was actually to do with the big data. So it's not, the kind of things that he was bringing up was obviously related to Afghan and other areas that perhaps we don't necessarily think so much about on a day-to-day basis living where we do. The reality, though, is that the decisions we make do have an impact, because ultimately the kind of services that we're providing, the way that we as a business operate does impact this. And the reality is we have 269 million more men online than we do women. So it starts to skew the data, and we have to be able to take a step back and make sure that those biases that are already in the system get addressed, so that those people that aren't necessarily getting served do get served, so we can really, really change this and make sure that 300 years isn't the reality.
Another quick one as well. I mean, I'm looking at the theme of this year's International Women's Day, and embracing equity was a big call for inclusivity at the moment. Men and women working together towards these goals as well. For someone who's made it their sort of life's work as well to address these issues for a number of organisations, how frustrating is it that in 2023 we're still talking about glass ceilings?
Very. Yeah, look, I think what's great is the conversation's evolved.
Yeah.
But it's not like I don't wake up and think again. But it is evolving, and the conversations we're having are so different. And this year, in comparison to what we were doing last year, is enormously different. So, all of the events that we're running this year are really around allyship and around he for she and bringing men into that conversation. And I love that it's embracing equity, because it really isn't about, if we say, for example, equality is giving somebody a shoe, it really is about giving somebody a shoe that fits. And I think that shifting in mindset is really happening. And that's a great thing. So, yes, while it can be frustrating to still be hearing these terrible statistics, it's quite good to see the mindset shifting.
Yeah, well, hopefully
it's positive.
Everyone will address it today, International Women's Day 2023. Diana, can't thank you enough, not just on today, International Women's Day, but for all the work you do. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much for having me.
Diana Wilde, co-founder of Aurora 50.
Dubai Eye 103.8.
Join the conversation.